Hey y'all, and welcome to the Sugar Diaries with Belle. I am your host, Belle. Here we will be talking about living with type 1 diabetes or even diabetes in general, and the highs and lows that come with it, the lifestyle changes that come with it, everything that you may have on your mind and on your hearts about type 1 diabetes. I am a type 1 diabetic myself, so a lot of my opinions are based on living my life with type 1 diabetes. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 8 years now, and because I was diagnosed at 30, I was actually misdiagnosed at first. So much so that I ended up in the emergency room. And it was definitely a lot for me to get to where I am now. Living, understanding sugars, understanding insulin, understanding how the pancreas works, understanding everything about diabetes in general. And so I just wanted to share that with others. This podcast will be about people with their own journeys of type 1 diabetes. I'll have guests here who speak on behalf of, their life and what age they were diagnosed as, how long they've been living with it and understanding, and still the struggles they go through to this day. Most people with type 1 diabetes are diagnosed young, but mine simply came later in life. My pancreas simply stopped working at a specific time, and that happened to be when I was 30. And that's just the way life worked out for me. So I've been through a whole lot, including hospital stays, high sugars, low sugars, a high-risk pregnancy, all kinds of shit. Too much insulin, too little insulin, countless sleepless nights. But I'm here to share my story, and I'm so glad you are here listening. So let's get into it. Today, we're just going to start off with the basics, and that is, what is diabetes? So, diabetes is a chronic condition that affects how your body turns food into energy. Normally, when we eat, our body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose, which, as you know, is a type of sugar. Insulin, a hormone made by the pancreas, helps that glucose get into your cells to fuel them. But with diabetes, either your body doesn't make enough insulin or it can't use insulin properly. So, with that, it sort of gives you the breakdown of why there is type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So, type 1 diabetes is where the immune system attacks insulin-producing cells. Type 2 diabetes is where the body becomes resistant to insulin. That's why there is a big difference. Even though diabetes overall, we still do the same things. We still check our sugars. We still have to understand insulin to carb ratio. We need to count our carbs when we're eating to make sure that it's not going to be too much sugar in the blood. The biggest difference is that type 1 diabetics need, and I stress that so much, need insulin to survive. Understanding diabetes is so crucial because it affects millions of people around the world, and knowledge is the first step to managing it. We're going to break down so much more and have so many stories and experiences with this. So just come along with me with my journey of living with type 1 diabetes. So, type 1 diabetes is usually diagnosed in children or young adults, but it can happen at any age. As I've already told you, mine happened when I was 30 years old. My pancreas just ran completely out of insulin, and that's crazy. It was crazy to me at the time. I truly had no idea what was going on. I was living my everyday life, and one day I happened to go to my primary care physician, and we checked my labs, and he told me I'm pre-diabetic. I'm like, okay, I guess that just means I need to change my diet. I need to exercise more. But I was only 105 pounds at that point in my life. So I wasn't really unhealthy. I wasn't really eating bad. I don't even like sugar, if I could say that. Like, I didn't eat candy much, cakes, cookies, things like that. Like, I just wasn't into sugars. I like to eat, not gonna lie, but I wasn't big on sugars. Now, carbs, yes. When I finally learned how to, calculate carbs and things like that, I do realize I love me some pasta. I love potatoes. I love rice. I love things like that. So, I did have all that. However, back to the point. I was only 105 pounds and I was being diagnosed as pre-diabetic. I did labs 3 months later, came back. Obviously, my A1C was over a 6 and they diagnosed me as having diabetes, but as type 2 diabetes. With that, I was prescribed metformin. So I was taking metformin. However, even though I was eating right, taking metformin and exercising, my sugar was still in and around the 300s almost every day, high 200s to the 300s almost every day. So I was still dealing with high sugars. What came with the high sugars I was dealing with? I was losing weight. I was very thirsty all the time. I was dehydrated a lot. Even though I was very thirsty, I was dehydrated. I also started getting blurred vision. And with all of that, I ended up going to the woman's doctor because all that high blood sugar in my stream caused a UTI, which is a urinary tract infection. So when I went to the doctor for that, I had a lot of sugar in my urine, and they sent me straight to the emergency room. My sugar, when they tested my blood glucose level, it was a 511. When I got to the emergency room, they immediately admitted me, put me in the back and everything, and I just did the A1C test. However they do that, my A1C came back as a 12, which is crazy. But that's what it was. And that is when I found out I had type 1 diabetes. I did not need metformin. I needed insulin specifically. And it has been that way since. Every day I need insulin. So I am currently on a long-acting insulin and a fast-acting insulin for when I eat. I do have to take both. And I take a good amount of it. If I wake up one day and there was no insulin or there is no insulin, I probably couldn't eat anything because literally everything makes my blood sugar spike. I mean, a cup of apple juice could send me to 280. Not even a cup, half a cup, send me to 280. All kinds of stuff. Fruit. People, a lot of times tell me about you should juice your own juices and not drink processed juice and things like that. Even a strawberry. If I eat a bowl of strawberries, my sugar is going to spike. That's that. Fruit also has sugars in it, for those who may not know. So, that is just a little introduction into the diabetic world and into me living with type 1 diabetes. So as we continue our journey on this podcast of talking about diabetes awareness, living with type 1 diabetes, living with type 2 diabetes, we will have guests, we will have facts. Every podcast will have a type of fact to help you understand what exactly we are dealing with, or you can expect what certain fruits or vegetables do to your sugars, what insulin to carb ratio is, what to be careful for when taking insulin, because insulin can be very, very dangerous. So that is scary. I definitely have some scary stories about taking insulin that we will explore, and we'll hear from others about their experiences with insulin and things like that. So we'll just, see where everyone goes when it comes to type 1 diabetes, how they live with type 1 diabetes, how they understand type 1 diabetes. And I hope this podcast can be very helpful to you. I hope that even if you have any input, if you're living with type 1 diabetes or know someone living with diabetes in general, maybe we can share some stories and feedback, and I can have you as a guest. But again, this is the Sugar Diaries with Belle. I am Belle. I appreciate you for listening thus far, and I look forward to helping educate and bring awareness to diabetes in general for everyone. So, thanks. Have a good day, and we'll see you on our next episode.